Hello, comrades. I just read the 1902 five-star classic story, The Monkey Paw. And it's connected to something I've been thinking a lot about recently. If you don't know the story or you haven't seen the Simpsons episode, it's about someone who obtains a mummified monkey's paw that can allow someone to get three wishes. And of course, we already know the wish is going to have some kind of negative effect. There's going to be a price to pay. And I've been thinking a lot about this trope. I don't know exactly what to call it. I think the monkey's paw might be the most famous example, so you could just call it like the monkey's paw trope or the genie trope. There's like a genie, the genie grants a wish, and the genie's kind of messing with you. I always kind of thought of it as like the be careful what you wish for trope. And so the thing I'm wondering about is why is this so common? And I'm not quite sure if it's just has to do with how stories are built. No, we already know when they get the monkey's paw and they have three wishes, and at the very beginning of the story, they wish for 200 pounds. We know something bad is gonna happen. And I don't think that's because of human nature or any kind of deep moral truth or anything. I think that might just be because it would be a really boring story if it just literally gave you whatever you wanted with no bad outcome, with no price to pay. Man wishes to win lottery, wins lottery, becomes a millionaire, lives happily ever after is simply not an interesting story. And so I think when we're at the beginning of the story, we know there's going to be something else. We know there's more to come. And so that's kind of what I thought I was going to get into because, I already knew the basic premise and it was like a famous example of like this trope where, you have the three wishes and it doesn't go well. Said no, I think that's an interesting number. People really like the number 3 and like there are a lot of like 3-act stories and stuff. But I always wondered why is it 3 wishes? It might just be, the first wish is enough, show that there's a problem. The second wish is to kind of dig in deeper, and then the third wish, which if you're wise, might be enough to put everything back together. But one of the things I was kind of caught off guard a little bit by actually, reading the story was it was very explicitly about fate and how the monkey's paw was made so that people would learn that they couldn't go against fate. Which is another, I would have thought, different trope that I think most of us are very familiar with. It comes up a lot. Especially, I always think of, the Greek plays, like Oedipus Rex, where, they have the fortune, and it's going to be something bad, and then they try and prevent the bad thing, but then their actions meant to prevent the bad thing they're trying to avoid are the very actions that lead to it happening. It's their own undoing. I was never really quite sure what to do with those kinds of stories because, of course, if there really is a destiny, you won't be able to escape it. And so when your destiny does ultimately catch up to you, I don't think that's thematically very interesting. It feels, more like just the background for the story and the other deeper themes of the story. But to have it kind of thrown in there explicitly within the story itself, that this is to teach people about destiny, that is the purpose of the monkey's paw within the context of the story, I think is a really interesting choice, and I'm still really not quite sure what to do with it in terms of interpreting it, and it really feels like there is no lesson to be learned. Your fate will come to you if you believe in fate. So it seems like the moment you do kind of believe in fate, you are kind of stuck in that position where you do have to accept everything that's going to come. And then if you have some way of knowing what it will be or changing it, that it either won't work or it will be bad. But maybe my problem is I am trying to understand this from the perspective of somebody who doesn't believe in fate. Maybe it's kind of emotionally different when you actually do, you truly believe in fate. And I've been thinking some about Calvinists, Christians, who honestly believe that, some of us are just damned to hell. We're gonna go get tormented for all eternity, and some of us will go to the kingdom of God, and it's pre-planned. Everything is already set in motion, and God knows already who will be the ones who will be tormented. For me, I don't think I could accept this. But I think if you do believe it, there might be kind of a large space, an emotional space to have kind of these type of stories to think about fate. Maybe you don't even have to go that far. I was thinking of, Fiddler on the Roof. There's the famous song, If I Were a Rich Man, or if you prefer the Gwen Stefani version, If I Was a Rich Girl. And so one of the lines in that song, he has, would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? And if you do believe in fate, you do have to kind of accept that it actually would spoil some vast eternal plan. In that case, if there were some kind of device, some kind of monkey's paw or genie or demon or whatever it was that could somehow break fate, that would be a bad thing. It's not just the fun premise to this interesting fantasy story, like Fairly Odd Parents. It is a deeper, perhaps inherently evil power, which I think is interesting to think about. But anyways, it's getting pretty late, and so there were some words I looked up. So actually, I didn't look up this one, but I thought it was really cool. It's without. And it doesn't mean without a thing, as to not have that thing. It was used without as in to mean outside, which I did not know was still in use in the 20th century. I thought that was an older usage. The next up was hark, which means to listen. It's a word I'd heard a million times. I think it's like in some Christmas Carol. It's an older word. It means to listen. I just never really bothered looking it up before and just kind of went with the vibes and have to really understand what it meant. We have condoling, which means to give your condolences. I think now we just say to give your condolences. But perhaps maybe condoling is still a word. There's leastways, which is British and might still be in usage, I'm not sure. And finally, we have the word bibulous, which means, I like this one, meant either very absorbent or drinking a lot. And I think very absorbent was the first definition in the dictionary I looked up, but I think just the root, it comes from drinking a lot. So it could be kind of an excessive amount of drinking. I've been talking about some horror stories throughout October, so if that seems cool to you, you can subscribe and hit the bell, and you can click over here, and we can talk about Twilight and Carmilla and vampires and what vampires are. But don't forget, good night, good day, good potato. I don't think it quite makes the same sound here.